He's coming this Saturday night to the Wayne Center for Performing Arts on the campus of William Paterson University with the Harry Chapin's Greatest Stories live show. Tom Chapin, good morning and welcome to WDHA and All Mixed Up.
Thanks so much, Jim. Nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
So, one of the things I wanted to ask you about kind of goes back to the earliest roots of your performing career. And I managed to dig up an old tape of you, Harry, and Steve, your brothers, on the Merv Griffin show. And
Oh my goodness.
I'm listening to those harmonies, Tom, and then your daughters, I listen to their harmonies, and there's something about voices from the same family that harmonize in such a unique way. You can hear it with the Beach Boys, you hear it with the Bee Gees, you hear it with the Cowsills. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young had amazing harmonies, but it wasn't the same because it wasn't the family. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think it's partly genetic and partly just the fact that you grow up together and invent the world, the musical world together. My dad was a jazz drummer, and he was in a totally different kind of music. But his mom, my grandma, had us all take music lessons. And we were living then in the village. And we went to Greenwich House Music School, and I took clarinet for 5 years, and Harry took trumpet, and Steve took piano. And then when we were 12, I was 12, Harry was 14, Steve was 11, we heard a recording called The Weavers at Carnegie Hall. The seminal record in the folk revival, really, because the Weavers were Pete Seeger and three other people, Ronnie Gilbert, the wonderful voice, and Lee Hayes and Fred Hellerman. And every folk group was they invented the folk group, the American folk group. So Peter, Paul and Mary, the Kingston Trio, the Limelighters, and the Chapin Boys all got inspired by this, and we got acoustic instruments. Harry got a banjo, and I got a guitar, and Steve played bass, and we became the Chapin Brothers. We did it for 10 years, and you're singing together, and you're hearing each other all the time. You're learning from each other and learning with each other. So I think that's the Bee Gees too. The family groups spend thousands of hours performing together and doing this stuff, and that's the voices that you hear is your brother's voice and your other brother's voice and what sounds good together. And so it's partly just doing it.
You mentioned growing up in a home where dad is a musician. He's a jazz drummer. I'm curious. I know what my own parents' reactions were when they saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. Both parents played musical instruments. Dad was, that's not music. What was your dad's reaction?
Well, my dad, it was a little different story because he and my mom divorced when I was young, but he was like a favorite uncle. But he was at first with the rock and roll stuff was I'm not so sure. But then he got, as he got older, he was a teacher, a jazz teacher. He wrote a book in 1948 called "Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer," and many of the great rock drummers in America, studied a little bit with him because he was the guy who to teach independent coordination, and guys who had grown up playing really hard like this. As they got older, they said, "Man, I should study a little bit. It's hard getting hurt." And my dad, until he died, was playing. He did what was called the Moeller method. So this is a long way around to say that he decided he got into he liked Cream, and he liked some of and he knew some of the drummers. And he loved the fact that we were doing. That we had our own music and stuff. And one summer we hired him. On the Merv Griffin show, I think that was the year when Dad was playing with us. And he knew Merv, I'm not sure that's how he got on the show. I think it was actually Merv Griffin was in New York, and they were or I guess maybe it might have been Philly, wherever they filmed. But they had people looking in New York in the clubs for comedians and for music, and Chapin happened, and then when it was Dad as well there to talk to Merv, who had been a big band singer, and Dad was but that was, I tell you, that was pretty amazing to be on the Merv Griffin show because we didn't have a recording contract or anything, and it was fun. It's fun to see that now and look back and say, oh, look at these young dudes. Who knew that
Right.
60 years later I'd be doing this still.
You mentioned that your dad was a teacher. I am the son of a former kindergarten teacher, the husband of a former kindergarten teacher. And I know you've been so closely aligned with children's music over the years. I think you once said you wanted to make music that was kid friendly and adult safe. And as the son and husband of former kindergarten teachers, thank you so much because there's only so many nursery rhymes you can listen to.
Well, that was what happened. Abigail and Lily, my daughters, were 8 and 6, and they'd outgrown Raffi at that point, and the wonderful Pete Seeger young his records, and we were trying to think what do you play in the car for these kids, and it turned out they liked the Eagles because they could harmonize, and they liked some of the songs. They liked the Beatles, Yellow Submarine, some of that, and they loved Bob Marley. And this is like 8 and 6. They said, "Boy, this is the time they write a kids record." I'd already had a TV show for kids, Make a Wish, which ran for 5 years and won an Emmy and a Peabody. And people kept saying, "You got to do a kids record." But then I saw Raffi had already done this, and so it had Pete Seeger. But when they got to be 6 and 8, I said, "Boy, there's not a lot of music for this age, an age that understands humor and irony. They understand the jokes and stuff." And what was happening, and still happens, is that pop music kind of filters down to a 6-year-old, and a lot of times it's rebellion songs or love songs, which don't really hit right where you want to be talking to them. So that was the impetus in 1988 for me to do the first family recording called Family Tree. And I was lucky enough I asked Judy Collins to sing a song, and she sang 3 songs on it with me. And all of a sudden, I had a whole career doing family music with my friends, my wonderful collaborators, John Forster and Michael Mark and John Cobert. And Michael Mark and John Cobert are still my band. and John Forster and I just wrote a song called "No Kings," which is up there at the moment. So I still know these guys. But the idea was to write songs, as you said, that were really fun for kids, but also adult friendly, because we're the ones who have to buy the tapes and play them over and over and over again. And the highest praise, really, Jim, is when teachers pick them up, and they have. There's a song called "This Pretty Planet," which is ubiquitous, especially during COVID when music teachers had to teach music by Zoom like we're doing, and that song was one of the songs that they taught. It's "Around for the Round Earth," and Judy Collins sang on it, and my children, Abigail and Lily, sang on it as well. I never expected to have a career as a family artist, but I did that and still do. I'm doing a school show on Wednesday here in Rockland County. No, actually, it's over across the river in Pleasantville, but. I love doing it. The idea that families, and it's not mosh music. It's not for toddlers. It's like singer-songwriter with families, and the songs are fun and interesting and active, and I'm very proud of that 13 albums that I've done for families.
Your latest album is called Songs of Hope, and I love the title. Tell us about that.
Well, this is a moment where the bad news seems to be all over. We're at war that nobody wanted except for a couple of people, and we don't know how to get out of it. And people are getting killed all over and so I thought, I have 27 albums, and I thought there's some songs that are of mine that are spiritual without being religious, and I thought. And I had a song called "Hymns," which was a new one that John Forster and I just wrote. And I thought a bunch of these songs are out of print even now. And so I thought, why don't I make a playlist of my songs over the years that fit this moment, that talk to people about the world, a better world, or a possibility, or a story song about that. And so I put together a playlist of 14 songs. And I saw Songs of Hope. That's what, and people have been responding amazingly to this. this is also this what I do and I've been doing my whole life. And what inspired us originally with Pete Seeger was that these are songs that don't have to be love songs but they can also be talk about things, and the folk process, and people like Woody Guthrie and Pete were able to do those songs, but also songs about anti-war or all kinds of different things you could write about and sing about, and that inspired the Chapin Boys originally. So here I am now in my dotage. I just turned 81, and still performing. And I remember this great quote that Harold Leventhal, who was the manager of the Weavers, and Pete, I heard him say once. He said, when times are bad, this is when Pete was alive. When times are bad, Pete Seeger's career soars. And what I understand about that now is that the concerts we do are so powerful in a way that that they weren't in a happy, peaceful time. People come together and sing and listen and share, and it's a very powerful thing to be doing, and I feel blessed.
I'm glad you mentioned the song Hymns. I had it on in the background as I was going through stuff to, figure out what questions I wanted to ask you. And out of nowhere, I hear, "Is that Little Richard?" Oh, I back it up. I go, because I don't remember a hymn that had womp bop a loo bop a womp bam boom in it. And so I listened to it again. And then the next thing I know, I'm hearing a guitar lick from Layla. And then I'm hearing
Yeah.
something else. I go, oh, I get what he's doing, because these songs that we grow up with become, there's a spiritual quality to it, whether they're meant to be or not. There's just something about these songs that we grow up with, and we associate them with memories, with family, perhaps, or friends, and it takes on a whole different thing. So, yeah, I guess Little Richard does belong in that category.
You as a radio guy, you just know how powerful this is. We both spend our lives in music, and we started actually trying to write a song called the Human Hymnal about those songs, and then we started, well, what are those? What is a human hymnal? And then what is a hymn? And then we realized, and that began, and so the song quotes 18 different songs that you and I know, and what's wonderful doing this in concert is they're not sure where we start, but the opening is, there are songs that come and go, there are songs I barely know, but the songs I know and love feel like hymns. A Motown hit, a sing-along, a lullaby, a Beatles song. This is the hymn book in my head. And then we followed that trail down and sang a bunch of them. Just the chorus or the line, and it was great fun. We had about 25 of them there. We had to cut them down. We took out "Stop in the Name of Love." There's so many songs that you could do. So we tried to. The idea was to how to make it musical, so that they rhymed and it made sense musically. And it was a great. John Forster, who's a wonderful writer, and I had a great deal of fun doing that.
You mentioned telling stories, and of course, that was one of the hallmarks of your brother Harry's career. And in fact, the show is called Harry Chapin's Greatest Stories Live. As you perform these songs year after year, Tom, how do they impact you differently?
Well, they're wonderful songs and wonderful arrangements. And we have a cello, and Steve and the original band, Steve and John Wallace and Howie Fields, are from the original Harry Chapin Band, and a wonderful young cellist. And those arrangements are just so good, and so first of all, they're just fun to do. And every once in a while, you're doing, and the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon or something, and you fall into that hole of go, whoa, Harry, man, because we were so close. He was 2 years older, and the music was always a sharing, not a competition. The competition was in sports, or games, with the boys. But the music was a shared experience, and I was the other after the Chapin brothers, and we were all doing some separate stuff. I was the other kind of front man. My brother Steve is an amazing musician, but he loves to be the arrangement side, and he's a great singer and stuff. But Harry and I were the kind of front people, So he would call me and talk to me, and I still miss the having finished a song and I would sing it for Harry, and he was always a wonderful resonate. That's really great. You might do this, and I did that and Steven did as well, because we started out writing together and doing that stuff. And so I still miss that of Harry, not to mention the family stuff and all that. And he's missed his grandchildren, and it's like, he's been gone since '81, But the amazing thing to me also is a couple of things that people still remember him so well. I remember also about talking about Cats in the Cradle. I remember I was his benefit band for the last 5 years for Why Hunger. Harry and I would go out and he would do them solo, and then the next year he'd ask me to come along, so we'd do it, because it was too expensive to bring the big band most of the time. And we're doing a concert, and he talked about Cats. He says, that was the #1 hit. It's not my song anymore. It's theirs. And that's what happens with these great songs. Speaking of hymns, that's also, I quote that in there, but in that song. But that's true about how music, a hit record, it lives on, and it's wonderful to watch and to be able to do these great songs, Taxi and Mr. Tanner and a whole bunch of them, that you do over and over again, and they live, they're wonderful to perform, I guess is the answer.
You mentioned Why Hunger, and of course, Harry is so closely identified with that. Bill Ayers as well, and you. And there's a component to that this coming Saturday night. You're asking concert goers to bring a non-perishable item of food to the concert as well.
Well, that's an ongoing thing with all of us, and Jen is still on the board. I'm on the board of Why Hunger, but I'm emeritus, which sounds like I'm sick, but it just means I'm a little older, and I've done it ever since Harry was alive, and so it's still one of the proudest things that we do. That is an astonishing organization that does great work. And if you're coming to the concert, and I hope you are, those of you listening, just bring some perishable food for your neighbors, And now, as gas prices are roaring up, and so everything that requires a truck or a travel, like food, is getting more expensive. Think about your neighbors who need help.
It's this Saturday night, Harry Chapin's Greatest Stories Live. Tom Chapin, along with the Chapin Sisters, the Harry Chapin Band, at the Wayne Center for Performing Arts on the campus of William Paterson University. And you can check out all things Tom Chapin related on his website at tomchapin.com. Tom, thank you so much for your time this morning. Have a great show Saturday night.
Jim, wonderful talking to you. Thanks so much for having me, and we'll see you soon, I hope. And good luck with your baseball team this year.